Welcome again, everyone. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Margo. She's going to get us started. Also, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can save them till the end. We will have time for Q&A at the end. And I also did just start recording this, so you can also refer back to it later as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Margo, and I'm also going to share my screen and we can get started.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Margo Pisacano, Margo and Company, and I have a rental real estate office as well as sales. And I'm very interested in helping find more year-round rentals for our Cape community. It seems like there's a lot of apartments going up and a lot of condos, but what we really need, I think, is affordable house rentals and condos too. But the house rentals seem to be really scarce. And some of the opportunities that we have as agents and Housing Assistance Corp and their landlord incentive program is to try and convert second homes, meaning vacation homes, properties that may have been inherited as people pass on or through different estate situations, and then our vacation homes. All of those are excellent candidates for us to work with the landlords and see if they would be interested in changing from a short-term or earning income from their properties. I think we can go to the next slide. Then renting versus year-round versus short-term. I'll give you a minute just to take a look at the slide. Basically, in a synopsis, a year-round owner will typically have guaranteed income for the year. This is all predicated on finding a qualified tenant that can afford your rental, and with due diligence on a background check will maintain your home. But the costs are so much less when you convert to a year-round home. Pretty much the only thing the landlord is going to be paying in most cases, depending on the house, would be your taxes, your water, possibly your town sewer, and your insurance for the home. The tenants on a year-round rental would be paying all the utilities, their own renter's insurance, landscaping maybe, snow plowing. So to convert a home from a vacation home to a year-round, you have more guaranteed income and hopefully less wear and tear. And your bottom line would be larger at the end of the year. Next one. And that's similar to what I was just talking about. There's always financial risks with short-term versus long-term. It really comes down to qualifying the tenant. Some of the fees are listed here.
We're financial to a podcast on.
Can you hear me?
Yep, sorry, go ahead. Someone was just unmuted. You should be good.
Oh, that's fine. So just talking about short-term rental, in many towns have extensive fees to register your house for short-term rentals. Some towns are a little less than what's stated here, but there are other costs for short-term rentals. You're going to be paying possibly weekly cleaning, or depending on how many times you turn your rental. If you're doing a 3 or 5 day rental, which has gotten very popular, you know, there's a lot of turnaround and wear and tear on those. The bottom line for that is if you can supplement it, maybe we can go to the next slide. There's the expenses that I was talking about here. Gives you a quick little rundown, and we can always elaborate more per property. Each property is different. I like to take them as they come. You know, sometimes it'll be a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom. The best candidates for, I think, converting to a year-round might be some homes that are more inland, away from the beach, maybe not as attractive for a summer vacation home. Those make great homes to convert. And these are some of the expenses that I had mentioned before. And again, each home will make a difference. You'd have to look at them one at a time. And each town has different taxes and different costs for utilities. The next one. So these figures, this is just kind of in a nutshell. We took a house with, in Falmouth, a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and ran down the short-term income for the summer. And a few of these, it says over in the top left of each diagram, it would be whether it includes winter rentals or not. Barnstable, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, that came out at net income similar, but that's assuming a good 6 or 8 month winter rental. And then Eastham. The problem with a winter rental guaranteeing on that is that winter rentals have softened over the year, I feel, in my business, and guaranteeing that extra income can be more risky, but it can supplement you nicely if you go that route. Again, more wear and tear. Will the tenants vacate by the end of the season? That's always a risk for summer landlords who really look for guaranteed money in the summer. So those charts, Kerry and I do rentals. Would be happy to go over that with your particular home or just even suggestions for you. Next one. Okay. And then this is kind of another short summary of the slide you saw just before this, where your expenses are listed down below for a summer rental. You know, you're paying the electricity, you're paying the internet, you're paying water, maybe sewer, landscaping, trash removal. All of those can add up over the summer period. And then you have agent fees or online internet fees. Some of the vacation sites online, you know, have pretty good fees to them. And then your town rental registration. So this again is a kind of a different view of what we just had on the other slide. And then year-round revenue, taking a typical, what I would consider $2,700 for a 2-bedroom house with some amenities. Might have central air for the summer, gas heat, maybe a garage, but every house can be priced differently. And times 12 months, you've got your expenses lower. You have your agent fee, water fee, maybe sewer. You have a move-in cleaning. Typically, in my office, we have the tenant pay the exit cleaning, so there's only one cleaning going in on a year-round rental. And then you have a rental registration fee average. So those are some of the costs for either short-term and year-round. Next slide. Then I think Rent365 is coming up, and that is... Who's taking that slide? Tana? Great, thank you.
I'm with Housing Assistance Corporation. I'm a project manager in our housing development department, but I also serve as the program administrator of the Rent365 incentive program. As Marissa mentioned at the opening, this program offers a cash incentive, which is in addition to all of the other upsides that Margo just went over in her presentation, to landlords who are willing to convert their current short-term or seasonal rental into a year-round rental. So landlords who have also newly purchased their property, or maybe are have used their property as a personal home, but for whatever circumstance now need to move elsewhere, are also eligible to participate in this program. So it's not only for short-term rental conversions, but if you're bringing a new home that's not currently part of the inventory of year-round rentals right now onto that inventory list, you are eligible to participate. Another important note with our program is that there's no income restriction to participate. I get that question a lot from interested landlords. And there's also no limit on the amount of rent that you can charge as a participating landlord under the program guidelines. So in brief, the incentives that we're able to offer are $4,000 for a 1-bedroom, as you can see on this chart, $5,000 for a 2-bedroom unit, and $6,000 for a 3-bedroom unit. Those 3 incentives are paid out over a 2-year period. It's just to ensure that the unit remains a year-round rental beyond the initial lease sign up. We also have a $10,000 incentive for ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units, for anybody who's not already aware. That's for newly created or newly converted accessory dwelling units that are rented year-round to a non-family member. So your, authentic in-law apartment would not qualify, but, another form of an ADU would. And that incentive, since it's so large, is spread out over 3 years. And finally, we have a $500 lease renewal bonus. This renewal bonus is designed to further incentivize landlords who continue to rent out their property under a year-round lease, even beyond whatever their obligation is under this program. And if you want to hit the next slide, Marissa. The application process for this program is pretty straightforward. You can visit our website to access our online application. That website is hackoncapecod.org/program-services/rent365. I think it was on the previous slide, but I can reiterate that at the end if anybody wants to hear that address again. On that online application, we do require, in addition to some basic information about the property, a few documents to be uploaded, includes a photo ID, your recorded deed, just to show proof of ownership, of course, some form of proof that you are actually converting the short-term rental into a year-round rental. That can include a copy of that short-term rental registration that Margo was talking about that many towns have. It could include a copy of your excise tax bill that you often have to pay with a short-term rental, or it could just be your most recent short-term rental lease. And then finally, we will need to have a signed year-round lease. Now, we can approve an application before that signed year-round lease is executed. So if you're anticipating doing that with your property, you can go ahead and apply to the program. We can approve you. We just can't release the funds until we have that signed year-round lease. So once all those documents are uploaded and your application is complete, including the year-round lease, we will draft a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, which details the terms under which you're going to get paid for participating in the program. That will be where we lay out the time period that you will receive your payments. And one important note on the memo of understanding is that if a landlord fails to continue to rent their unit under a year-round lease, during which time the memorandum of understanding is in effect, it could result in a forfeiture of the incentive funds. And then the last step is you get paid, which is what everybody is looking forward to. Next slide.
Yeah, before we move to Tana, we just had a quick question. Is the incentive taxable?
Is
You
it?
gotten that before? Yeah.
I have not gotten that before. That's a great question. I will find out the answer to that. I guess like any income, we request a W-9 in order to pay that incentive. So we are getting a W-9 and issuing these checks as though we're paying a vendor. So the degree to which I don't know if we send out,
Yeah, we can follow up on that and follow up afterward. It's a good question. I think no, but we'd have to do some investigating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so finally, just wanted to, report that we've had very good participation in our program. Over the last year or so, we've converted 14 homes across the Cape. I've got a couple of applications still pending right now. So, we have, had very good participation, very good level of interest. So I encourage any interested landlords to, visit our website, ask me questions at the end of this presentation. And yeah, it's been great. So I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Sandberg, who's going to talk about yet another incentive program, Lease to Locals.
Thank you, Tana. And hello, everybody. I'm Leslie Sandberg, and I am a Provincetown Select Board member. And I also work with Margo and Kerry. Just wanted to, the Rent365 program that HAC does is just fantastic. It really is great. And what I'm going to just touch on is another program that offers a way to convert short-term rentals to year-round rentals. And this is a town-based year-round incentive program. And a town's Provincetown, Eastham, Chilmark, they're all partnering with a company called Placemate, which is a real estate agency that was based in Truckee, California. And they saw the need because Truckee is close to Lake Tahoe, so it was vacation areas out in California. And they're like, we need to figure out a way to help convert short-term rentals and seasonal homes to year-round rentals. So the bottom line is that once Placemate contracts with the town, it then matches vacation homeowners with trusted and vetted locals who are seeking housing. So they do the vetting. The money comes from the town, and in Provincetown, where I'm there, we're using our lodging tax revenue to pay for the Lease to Locals program. The good news is that we completed our first year program, and we had 55 year-round residents housed across 33 properties in our town. And then I just got some information just the other day that we now are doing a year 2 group, and we have added an additional 16 people and an additional 14 properties. So for right now, there are 71 people in Provincetown who are no longer housing insecure. They're living year round, and it's 47 properties that participate. So that's another way to do it. It's having your towns. If you're someone who's an official from a town and you want to know more about it, you can contact us up in Provincetown. But again, just to let you know, Provincetown does work with the Lease to Locals program. Eastham, Orleans, and Chilmark are also doing it. But I also want to mention, if you looked at the map, you can also see that Rent365 is also in Provincetown, because there's a house that's been used there. And so that's just a little bit of a primer on the Lease to Locals program. And now I'm going to flip it over to Kerry, who's going to talk to you about how to be a year-round landlord. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I don't know, can you guys hear me? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Kerry Houde. I'm a realtor with Lamakia Realty in Falmouth. I do short-term rentals, year-round rentals, and sales also. So we'll just spend a few minutes right here kind of talking about how to be a year-round rental landlord, and kind of things that you need to know throughout the process. So setting the right rental rate. So before you decide what to list your home for rent at, you would want to research market comparables, comparing similar units in your area for pricing benchmarks. Understand local affordability, consider the average income levels in the town. Pricing too high could lead to long vacancies, where pricing a little bit lower could give you more opportunities for tenants. And then adjust your rate based on location and amenities. Different towns will have different demand levels based on location. I know Falmouth is a high demand area, I think because we're kind of so isolated in areas, and we also have access to the vineyard. So I do find that our Falmouth rentals are very much in demand right now. So, and then a tip would just be to reevaluate the rates annually based on market changes. And if you're looking to find out how much your home would rent for, year round, feel free to reach out to myself or Margo or another realtor to get an idea, because sometimes a lot of rentals never hit the MLS, where you would be able to search, recently rented properties. So if feel free to reach out to a local agent on that. Tenant screening. So it's important to screen your tenants before signing a lease with them. And really that reduces the likelihood of late payments, violations, potential evictions. And a tip would be to always be consistent with your screening process for all applicants to avoid discrimination claims. And then we put together a little list here of, what you would screen your tenants for, and kind of what that would look like. And everyone, I'm sure Margo has a process a little bit different from me, and I see a couple other agents on here that probably have a little bit different process. But in general, you would want one application per adult on the property. I know sometimes I get a little pushback on this from prospective tenants, because they'll say that, well, only one person will be responsible for the rent. But at the end of the day, as a landlord and a homeowner, you really want to know who's living in your property. So we request one application per adult, a credit and background check typically for each adult. There are new regulations in the state of Massachusetts as of August 1st that a landlord and or a realtor cannot charge a prospective tenant for a credit report or background check. That has to be a fee that the landlord or the realtor take on. There are ways that tenants can download their credit reports and email them to you and things like that. So just something to be aware of. We ask for proof of income. Usually I ask for 2 recent pay stubs, or if they're relocating out here, job offer letter, that type of thing. Landlord references, and proof of funds for the initial deposits. Next slide. Thank you. And then, so once you screen your tenant, you select a tenant, you're ready to move forward, then you come to the lease. So I put this little QR code on the bottom here. This links directly to the mass.gov website, which is a ton of information on how to be a landlord, what you need to know about rules, regulations, and all that. So, feel free to check that out if you want to learn more about the process and, requirements for landlords. Moving on to the lease part of it, you want to make sure that you have a lease that's compliant with Massachusetts. You want it to specify the rent amount, the due date, start and end dates. I always say start and end times too, because you never know. Sometimes people think they can stay there till midnight and the homeowner thinks they have a new tenant coming in at noontime. So just be really clear in your lease about the expectations. Maintenance responsibilities, you would want to include in there who's responsible for what, policies on pets, smoking, subletting, and then renewal terms, for both parties. Would you want a 30-day notification of renewal, 30-day notice of termination? Hash all that out before you sign anything, because once you put the pen to paper, it's a binding contract. And then security deposits. So in the state of Massachusetts, there's pretty specific regulations on how to manage security deposits. So I think that's super important to include as part of the lease agreement as well. And again, if you follow the QR code on the mass.gov site, it will go through all the regulations for security deposits. And then next, we'll just go through some landlord responsibilities. So as a landlord, your responsibility is really like timely repairs and maintenance. You need to provide a habitable living space for your tenants, heat, running water, maintaining common areas, and then proper handling of the security deposits. So again, in Massachusetts, there's pretty strict guidelines on where a security deposit needs to be held, how a tenant needs to be notified of where the security deposit is held, paying interest annually on the security deposits. So it's important to just know before you go in what the regulations are so that you can properly handle and not be at risk yourself for potentially losing a security deposit. And then lastly, you want to communicate clearly, keep open lines of communication with tenants throughout the entire tenancy. Fair housing guidelines. So you want to be cautious during advertising and tenant screening. So you never want to ask questions that could be considered discriminatory. The Federal Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, and familial status. In Massachusetts, there's added protection for sexual orientation, gender identity, age, marital status, military status, and source of income, including like retirement income or Social Security disability income or use of a housing voucher. And then final tips for year-round success. Document all communication. So, if your tenant calls you and, you have a conversation about something, I always follow it up with an email just to be sure that you both understand the conversation and what the end result was of that conversation, whether it's a repair or termination or anything like that. I always suggest conducting annual or biannual property inspections. Massachusetts law, you just have to give notice to your tenant prior to an inspection. Stay updated on landlord and tenant laws. Again, mass.gov is like the best. They do have a ton of information on what you need to know about being a landlord and your rights as a landlord and the tenant's rights. Building a network of reliable service providers is very helpful so that if something comes up, you'll be able to quickly address the situation. Heating specialists, AC, etc. And then treat your rental as a business. And I think that's my last slide. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you, Kerry. And we put Kerry and Margot's contact information here in case anyone wants to reach out to them as well. Yeah, that was excellent. I wanted to open up some time for Q&A. If folks have questions, I can stop sharing my screen. So feel free you can either pop off mute and ask your question or raise your hand or put your question in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with.
I know, I feel like we spill so much information.
Yeah, and that's why we share the contact information. We can send around the presentation as well if people want to follow up afterward and you think about your questions.
I actually have one question that I was thinking of kind of when Tana was talking. In regards to the ADU incentive for $10,000, does that specify, does it have to be a freestanding ADU or does it just have to be like a permitted ADU and not like an in-law suite?
Right, it just has to be a permitted ADU, so it can be, freestanding, it can be over a garage, it can be attached to the home, as long as it's designated as ADU. The really important distinction between it and another, so say, 1-bedroom unit, 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom unit, is that it's newly created. So it's adding a home, it's adding a unit of housing to our inventory, which is why the incentive is so much larger. And unfortunately, the incentive is not able to be paid to help with the construction of that unit. It's really an incentive to then rent that unit under a year-round lease as opposed to, a short-term or seasonal rental.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I guess this is great information. So thank you so much for providing this on such a simple deck. I just had a question, like, the things that come up with people, I think about not having difficulty with year-round rentals have to do with, I think everybody's like afraid of like these nightmare scenarios, like the background checks and, kind of things like that. I guess, is there any availability that, or I don't know, I hate to say like a centralized system where maybe, Hack kind of helps us out with that, or, I don't know, just kind of, you think of people are just like scared to handle that. And I don't know, I was just kind of curious if there's any way that, I don't know, I think if that's an obstacle, I think for some people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, Margo and Kerry, if you want to kind of talk about your experience with dealing with homeowners who maybe have had those concerns, and how like the tenant screening process can be really, really helpful there. But yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think you see these things on social media about these horrible stories about tenants not moving out and whatnot. But I think that's also really like a minority, a very small minority, right? But it's sort of the things that get amplified. So yeah, I don't know, Margo, do you have thoughts on how to mitigate that for folks?
Well, I think similar to Kerry, we do background checks, we run credit reports, and we have a range. I like to look, if I'm looking for my landlords, I call it 2 out of 3. Not everybody has perfect credit. Not everybody has perfect income. Not everybody has perfect landlord references. But if I can get reasonably good or better 2 out of 3, then usually my company can work with a tenant and we like to build them up as strong as we can before we present it to a landlord. So I think we like to create a relationship with the tenant also. If there's any possibility that we can get them into a home that they really want and need, then we'll work with them to do it. And then ultimately it's the landlord's decision. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's how we try and do it to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, no, it helps. I think just following the steps is what you have to do. It's just, I think that has a lot of people scared, personally.
Mhm.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to tenant screening, I think is just like the biggest important piece, and really looking at the tenant as a whole. And, everybody has a different story and a different reason for moving, and knowing what you're looking for in a tenant is actually really helpful, I find, because like if you're the type of person who like you're going to rent your home for the next 15 years year round, then you're looking for potentially a longer term tenant. And so what you look for in that tenant might be different than someone who's just looking to rent for a year while they find a place to purchase on the Cape. So I think knowing what you're looking for in a tenant is also a big piece in that, because picking the right tenant will alleviate some of your stresses as a landlord, and also will help the tenant feel secure in the rental that they're renting. So I would say knowing what you want in a tenant, and then the screening process is just the biggest piece.
Right. I agree.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
No, you guys have done a wonderful job. Terrific, straightforward, easy to understand information, and I'm very impressed with the presentation that you've all put on. I will say that an easy way to do some additional due diligence is either whatever property your home is located in, check the district court or the Southeast Housing Court. You can do that by either going down to the clerk's office. You have to go to Plymouth and check the clerk's office in the Southeast Housing Court, or Barnstable District, Falmouth, or Orleans, and just run the name in the system. That's a real easy thing to do. You'd be surprised. It's a no-brainer red flag. If the name pops up, you'll know why. You'll be able to check out any prior evictions that this prospective tenant may have been involved in.
Yeah,
check
Mike,
Sure.
Quick question, Mike. Is the online database for that pretty accurate? Because I know I use the online database for this housing court.
Yeah, I don't know, Kerry, whether non-attorneys can get in. There is a specific website, masstrialcourts.org, that I think you can subscribe to, and you should be able to get on and do an online search for whatever district court you want to look at, or housing court. Otherwise, make the trip down to the appropriate district court or housing court and just check the name in the system. I highly recommend that, because you'd be, you'll find your horrors. Hopefully, it's not a horror story, but if there is one, you'll find
it.
And
thank you.
There's a new law now where tenants can expunge their eviction record.
Correct.
It just came into effect in the spring, so you can still see them. But if you have a no-faulting tenant, after a certain amount of time, they can apply to the court to have that expunged. It's a little bit different if you have a for-cause eviction or a non-payment tenant. Those records are a lot harder to be expunged. But just keep that in mind. That after some point, after some time, the past behavior and records of tenants can be closed out to the public.
I have a question for Tana, if possible. On your Rent365 application process, it mentions, in order to receive the incentive, it has to be proof of a short-term rental or a signed year-round contract. What about the homes? They still apply if you're a year-round person retiring and moving and want to convert their year-round home? Okay, I wasn't sure because it wasn't listed, so I didn't know if that might be a different portion.
Yeah, obviously, the primary, design of the program is to convert short-term rentals to long-term rentals. But we understand that, the same goal or purpose is served by having a home that does not have a rental history. And a person's deciding, I'm going to rent this house now for the first time. Do I go short-term or do I go year-round? We want to incentivize them to go year-round. So yes, they would qualify for the program.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other because this is sort of an ongoing project for housing assistance, where I think we're working on sort of building out our website to have resources for folks who are interested in doing this. So, if people have other ideas of ways we can help get people more information or whatnot, please feel free to let us know. We're trying to make this a resource for the community, and, definitely appreciate partnering with the realtors on this and getting their input and expertise so that we can get this information out there, because it's something we're all invested in for sure. Looks like there was a question. Says-
Marissa, this is
Yeah.
Jillian Douglas.
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to read your question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I figured it better speak it instead of making people read it.
Yeah.
So there's the folks that are involved with conservation trusts have the benefit. They actually outreach to people, property owners, and solicit them to put conservation restrictions on their property. And the benefit that a property or landowner has from a discounted sale. So in other words, if they sell their property to a trust for a reduced price, it's a tax deduction.
Yeah.
And I believe they can take that over 20 years. So it can be, it's a huge benefit for landowners. We in the housing area don't have anything like that that I'm aware of. And we also don't really have, as John had mentioned, like a network that does outreach to property owners that might have vacant land or vacant parcel or units, so I guess what I'm trying to find out is if there's something that we can do sort of organizationally or network wise that might encourage the creation of such an organization or a network or something that would beef up the value that we could offer people for deed restrictions, because the value is high, and as we've just discussed, that the risk is kind of high for some people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I know there's some, things coming out with the seasonal communities designation and different mechanisms where towns could purchase affordable or purchase year-round deed restrictions from property owners. So that sort of gets at what you're talking about a little bit. But yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. It's something, we could continue to look into or try to advocate for.
Well, if I could just expand, so I think that towns are looking at how to purchase deed restrictions for to maintain the affordability and how we value that. I think Provincetown has had good experience with kind of coming up with sort of a price that they're willing to pay towards making those year-round affordable. But the difficulty we all seem to have is that value, while it's a cost to us, and it's a straight out benefit to the property owner, it would be, if there was a way to give a tax break instead, maybe there's a way that we could reduce the need for that constant revenue stream that we're going to need to maintain those units.
If I may, Jillian, thank you for, in Provincetown, you mentioned it, and I'm select board there. We have done if somebody rents year round, whether they live in town and they're doing it, or they own a property in town and they're renting it out to somebody else's year round, they get a residential tax exemption. So they basically get the benefit of if they are a resident. So that's one piece of it. I understand what you're saying, and I think you make a really good point. But there has been some incentives about that. And then in terms of year-round deed restrictions, we have done, there's a property right now that we're going to try to develop for 40 condos for sale. And the town is putting in, again, this is rental income. This is a short-term rental income with traditional lodging. We get about 5 million that comes in annually. We are going to put $4 million into that project to make sure that 30 units that are going to be condos for home ownership are below market rate and are also year-round deed restricted. So, I mean, I don't know if that helps out, but there's a lot, people are talking about it in municipal groups. And so I think what you said is very astute, and it's a great suggestion. So thank you.
And thank you for everything you're doing.
Great.
Everybody's doing a lot.
Yeah. Lots of good work, which is great. Any final questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and we'll follow up with this recording and the presentation, and yeah, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.